Commander Jake Morrison walked into the huge meeting room where beings from across the galaxy sat around a massive table. The room was so big that his footsteps echoed off the curved walls that reached up into darkness. Lights floated in the air without any support, showing technical specs and weapon details that made his heart beat faster. He had been waiting for this moment for 6 months, and now it was finally here. The Galactic Council War Committee was not an easy group to impress. These beings had seen weapons that could crack planets and ships that moved faster than light itself. They had watched empires rise and fall across thousands of years. To them, humans were still new players in a very old game. Admiral Vextar of the Krillian Empire sat at the head of the table. His 4 yellow eyes moved back and forth as he studied the floating display that showed the USS Defiant. His gray skin had scars from battles that happened before humans even knew other life existed. When he spoke, his voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "So the humans think they built something special," Vextar said with a laugh that sounded more like a growl. "One ship against our entire battle fleet. This is either very brave or very stupid." Morrison kept his face calm, even though anger was building inside him. For months he had tried to get these alien leaders to take humanity seriously. Every meeting ended the same way, with polite smiles and empty promises. They saw humans as useful for trade, maybe, or as workers in their factories, but never as equals in war. Captain Lisa Harper stepped up beside Morrison. She was tall and strong, with short brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been with him through every failed presentation and every closed door. Her voice was steady when she spoke to the council. "Admiral, with respect, our ship passed every test we could create. The power systems alone generate more energy than most of your homeworlds use in a year." The Altarian delegate made a sound like breaking glass. His body was made of living crystal that changed colors when he was annoyed. Right now he was flashing red and orange, which meant he thought someone was wasting his time. "Your species has been in space for less than 200 years, the Altarian said. "We have been building warships since your ancestors lived in caves. This display is nothing more than human pride pretending to be engineering skill." Other delegates around the table nodded and made sounds of agreement. The Zephyrians, with Ad in their blue skin and silver eyes, whispered among themselves in their musical language. The Thorian ambassador, who looked like a walking tree, swayed back and forth the way his people did when they found something amusing. Morrison had expected this reaction, but it still hurt. Humanity had worked so hard to earn respect in the galactic community. They had shared their art and music and stories. They had opened trade routes and built diplomatic ties. But when it came to military matters, the other species still saw them as children playing with toys. "Perhaps you would like to see our weapon specifications," Harper said as she touched a control on her wrist device. New images appeared in the air, showing energy readings and technical details that should have impressed anyone who understood physics. Vextar barely glanced at the new display. Numbers on a screen prove nothing. Any engineer can create impressive specifications on paper. Building something that actually works is much harder. "Then maybe we should prove it works," Morrison said quietly. The room went silent. Every eye and sensor and whatever the aliens used to see turned toward him. He could feel the weight of their attention, like a physical thing pressing down on his shoulders. Vextar's mandibles clicked together in what his species used instead of laughter. "You want to test your precious prototype against proven Krillian battle tactics. How wonderfully naive of you humans." Morrison knew this was a dangerous moment. If he backed down now, humanity would never get another chance to prove itself. If he went forward, He might be about to get a lot of good people killed. But sometimes the only way to earn respect was to take risks that scared everyone else. "One ship against your strike force," Morrison said. "Winner takes all." The alien delegates began talking all at once. Some sounded excited, while others seemed worried. The Thorian ambassador's leaves rustled faster, which meant he was thinking hard about something. The Zephyrians stopped their musical, whispering, and stared at Morrison with wide silver eyes. Vextar raised one clawed hand, and the room became quiet again. He studied Morrison for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether the human was serious or just making empty threats. "Very well," Vextar said finally. "We will arrange a demonstration in neutral space. I will bring 12 heavy cruisers and support craft. That should be enough to handle one human ship, no matter how advanced you claim it is." Harper touched Morrison's arm in warning, but he ignored her. This was what they had been working toward for months. All the late nights in the lab and the failed tests and the setbacks were leading to this moment. "When and where?" Morrison asked. "The Proxima Nebula in 3 weeks," Vextar replied. "It is far enough from inhabited systems that when your ship is destroyed, the debris will not hurt anyone important." Morrison felt his jaw tighten at the insult, but kept his voice level. "We'll be there." As the meeting broke up and the alien delegates filed out, Morrison noticed how they looked at him. Some seemed amused, like they were watching a child who did not understand how dangerous fire could be. Others appeared concerned, as if they genuinely worried about what might happen to the humans who had bitten off more than they could chew. Harper waited until they were alone before she spoke. "Jake, are you sure about this?" Vextar was not bluffing. "About those cruisers. Each one has enough firepower to level a city." Morrison walked to the great window that looked out over the council station. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved through space like bright fish in a dark ocean. Some were bigger than Earth's largest buildings, while others were small and fast like metal birds. "I'm tired of being patted on the head and told we're doing our best," Morrison said. "Humanity deserves better than that, but if we lose," Harper started to say. "Then we lose trying," Morrison finished. "But Lisa, I don't think we're going to lose. I think we're about to show the galaxy what humans can really do when we stop playing by everyone else's rules." News of the challenge spread through the galactic networks faster than light itself. Within hours, betting pools were forming on worlds Morrison had never heard of. The odds were not good for humanity. Most observers expected the demonstration to last maybe 10 minutes before the human ship was turned into scrap metal. What none of them knew was that the USS Defiant represented more than just human engineering. It was the result of a breakthrough that had taken their best scientists 5 years to understand and another 3 to build. While the galaxy had been perfecting bigger weapons and stronger shields, humanity had been learning to bend the basic rules of reality itself. Morrison stood in his quarters that night, looking at pictures of Earth and thinking about the people who were counting on him. Children who dreamed of exploring the stars, and scientists who wanted to share their discoveries with alien minds, and soldiers who were ready to fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. In 3 weeks, the galaxy would learn what humans could accomplish when they were finally ready to stop asking for permission and start taking what they had earned. 3 weeks passed like a dream filled with preparation and worry. The Proxima Nebula became the most watched piece of space in the galaxy as ships from every major power arrived to witness what most expected to be humanity's final lesson in humility. The nebula itself was beautiful in a deadly way, with clouds of gas that glowed purple and gold, while hiding dangerous radiation storms that could kill unprotected crews. Admiral Vextar commanded his strike force from the bridge of his flagship Devastator. The massive ship was 3 times longer than anything humans had ever built, and bristled with weapons that had broken the defenses of entire star systems. Around it sailed 12 heavy cruisers, each one capable of fighting a small fleet by itself. 36 fighter craft moved between the larger ships like angry wasps ready to swarm any target their admiral chose. The Krillian crews were confident and ready for what they saw as target practice. Most of them had fought in real wars against enemies who knew how to build proper warships. They had faced fleets of hundreds of ships and won through superior tactics and overwhelming firepower. One human vessel seemed like a joke compared to the battles they had survived. Vextar himself was less certain than his crews, but not because he respected human abilities. Something about this whole situation felt wrong to his experienced warrior instincts. In his long career, he had learned to trust the small voice in his head that warned him when enemies were more dangerous than they appeared. That voice was speaking now, but he could not understand what it was trying to tell him. "Admiral," called his tactical officer. "Sensors detect the human vessel approaching from hyperspace." On the main viewing screen, a single ship dropped out of, faster than light travel. The USS Defiant looked nothing like the angular warships that most species built. Instead, it was smooth and dark, like a blade made of black metal. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, giving the ship an unsettling quality that made veteran crews uneasy. Captain Lisa Harper stood on the Defiant's bridge watching tactical displays that showed the Krillian formation spreading into attack position. The enemy was using classic tactics that human strategists had studied for months. Hammer and anvil, they called it, with the fighters acting as the hammer to drive targets into the crushing anvil of the cruiser's heavy weapons. "They're positioning exactly as intelligence predicted," Harper said to Lieutenant Ben Carter, who was handling tactical systems. "Vexitar is following the standard Krillian battle doctrine right from their military textbooks." Carter nodded as his fingers moved across control panels that looked nothing like the mechanical switches and buttons most species used. The Defiant's systems responded to thought as much as touch, thanks to neural interfaces that let human minds connect directly with the ship's quantum computers. 36 fighters are forming attack wings," Carter reported. "Cruisers are moving to bracket our position. They want to box us in so we can't run when things get bad." Engineer Susan Walsh checked her displays from the lower level of the bridge. The quantum field generators that made the Defiant special were humming with power that could tear holes in reality itself. Every system was operating perfectly after months of testing and adjustment. "All quantum systems are stable," Walsh called out. "Field generators are ready for combat operations. We can maintain full displacement for up to 6 hours if needed." Commander Morrison studied the enemy positions on the tactical display. Hundreds of ships from other species hung at safe distances, recording everything with sensors that could detect a whisper in vacuum. Some were diplomats and observers, but others were intelligence agents trying to learn human secrets or military officers planning for future conflicts. The observation fleet included representatives from every major power in the galaxy. The Altarian, crystal ships that looked like floating jewels, Zephyrian vessels that sang in harmonics only their species could hear, Thorian bioships that were grown rather than built. Even the mysterious Void Walkers had sent a ship, though nobody could see it clearly because it existed partially outside normal space. Billions of beings across known space were watching through live feeds as the two forces maneuvered for advantage. Betting pools had formed on hundreds of worlds with odds heavily favoring the Krillian Empire. Some information brokers were already preparing reports about humanity's failed attempt to join the ranks of major military powers. Admiral Vextar opened a communication channel that reached every ship in the area. His voice carried the authority of an empire that had conquered star systems when most species were still learning to make fire. Human vessel, you have shown courage by coming here. No shame exists in recognizing when you are outmatched. Withdraw now, and we will consider this a training exercise rather than a real battle. Morrison's response was calm and measured, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. Admiral, we appreciate your concern for our safety. However, we came here to demonstrate our capabilities, and that is exactly what we intend to do. The words sent a chill through the observation fleet. Either the humans were about to commit suicide by pride, or they knew something that their ship specifications had only hinted at. Harper watched the enemy fighters begin their attack approach. The Krillian pilots were good and experienced, but they were thinking in terms of conventional warfare. They expected to face shields and armor and weapons that followed the same physical laws everyone else used. Quantum field generators are responding perfectly, Carter reported. Space-time displacement is holding steady at minimum power. The enemy won't be able to target us until we choose to let them. Morrison allowed himself a small smile as he watched. The tactical display. Months of preparation and testing had led to this moment. Humanity had spent years learning secrets that other species had never imagined, while the galaxy dismissed them as primitive newcomers. The Defiant's true capabilities were based on discoveries that human scientists had made by approaching physics from directions that alien minds had never considered. While other species built bigger guns and stronger armor, humans had learned to manipulate the basic structure of reality itself. All stations report ready for combat, Harper announced. Quantum, land systems are charged and targeting solutions are locked. We can engage at your command. The Krillian fighters were now close enough that their pilots could see the human ship clearly. What they saw confused and worried them. The Defiant seemed to flicker and shift like something seen through water. Their targeting computers could not get solid locks because the ship appeared to exist in multiple places at the same time. Squadron leader Zekmor led the first attack wing toward the human vessel. He was a veteran pilot who had survived battles that killed most of his comrades, but something about this target made his combat instincts scream warnings. Attack formation, Zekmor ordered his wing. All fighters prepare to engage on my command. As the distance closed, the Krillian sensors began registering readings that made no sense according to known physics. The human ship was there and not there simultaneously, existing in a state that violated everything they understood about how matter and energy worked. Morrison watched the approaching fighters with calm patience. Soon the galaxy would learn what humanity could accomplish when they stopped trying to copy everyone else's technology and started creating their own path through the stars. Minimum quantum displacement achieved, Walsh reported. All systems are stable and ready for combat operations. The moment of truth was approaching. In minutes, the most watched military engagement in galactic history would begin, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came when Squadron Leader Zekmor's instruments started showing impossible readings. His fighter's targeting computer kept losing lock on the human ship, even though it was clearly visible through the cockpit window. The target appeared solid one moment, then seemed to fade like smoke the next. "Command, this is Red Leader," Zekmor called over the communication system. "Our targeting systems are malfunctioning. The human ship is showing multiple positions simultaneously, similar." Reports flooded the Krillian tactical networks as 36 of their best pilots discovered that their weapons could not find a target that everyone could see with their own eyes. The USS Defiant seemed to exist everywhere and nowhere, creating sensor shadows that made conventional warfare impossible. Admiral Vextar felt the first cold touch of uncertainty as he listened to his pilots report system failures that made no sense. "All fighters maintain attack formation," he ordered. "Visual targeting if necessary. That ship exists somewhere, and anything that exists can be destroyed." On the Defiant's bridge, Commander Morrison watched the approaching enemy formation with calm patience. Months of testing had proven that their quantum field manipulation could confuse any targeting system in the known galaxy. Now it was time to show what happened when someone tried to fight an enemy that controlled the basic laws of physics. "Quantum field at minimum displacement," Morrison ordered. "Let them get close enough to understand what they're really facing, Lieutenant." Carter's neural interface connected his mind directly to the ship's quantum computers. Through this link, he could feel the fabric of space and time bending around the Defiant like water flowing around a stone. The sensation was strange and wonderful, and a little frightening even after months of practice. "Field generators are responding perfectly," Carter reported. "We're existing in a controlled probability state. Their weapons literally cannot hit what isn't entirely here." The Krillian fighters opened fire at maximum range. Streams of plasma bolts and particle beams lanced through space toward the human vessel in brilliant displays of destructive power. Each weapon was capable of punching through heavy armor or melting steel into vapor. Every shot passed harmlessly through empty space where the Defiant appeared to be. The weapons struck nothing but vacuum and dissipated into the nebula's glowing clouds. To the attacking pilots, it looked like their targeting computers were broken or their weapons had somehow forgotten how to work. Harper watched the enemy formation with growing excitement. This was the moment humanity had been building toward for years. All the late nights in research labs and the failed experiments and the breakthroughs that seemed impossible were coming together in a display that would change everything. "Their confusion is obvious," she observed. "Vextar's pilots are trained to fight enemies that follow normal physics. They have no idea how to engage a target that exists in quantum superposition." Admiral Vextar's alarm was growing as his fighters reported complete targeting failure despite multiple direct hits. His tactical displays showed weapon impacts on the human ship, but damage assessments came back negative. According to his sensors, the enemy vessel was taking devastating fire and suffering no harm at all. "This is impossible," Vextar growled. "No shield technology can deflect that volume of fire without showing power drain or heat buildup." The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rachel Kim, humanity's lead quantum physicist, was monitoring the engagement from Earth's Defense Command Center. Her voice reached the observation fleet through open communication channels that had been established for diplomatic observers. "Admiral, Vextar, and distinguished representatives," Dr. Kim said with barely contained excitement. "You are witnessing humanity's greatest scientific achievement. We have learned to weaponize the fundamental forces that hold reality together on tactical displays throughout the galaxy. The truth became apparent to those who understood advanced physics. The USS Defiant was not simply invisible or heavily shielded. It was existing in a state of controlled quantum displacement that made it occupy multiple positions simultaneously until the moment it chose to collapse its probability wave into a single location. Enemy weapons could not hit what was technically not entirely present in normal space and time. The human ship was dancing between dimensions using science that most species had never imagined possible. Engineer Walsh monitored the quantum field generators with growing confidence. Every system was performing exactly as designed, despite the stress of maintaining displacement under combat conditions. The Defiant could keep this up for hours, while enemy forces exhausted their ammunition shooting at shadows. Quantum Lance systems are fully charged and ready, Walsh reported. All targeting solutions are locked and verified. We can engage whenever you give the order. Morrison nodded once. The demonstration had proven their defensive capabilities, but now it was time to show what humanity could do when they stopped playing defense and went on the attack. Fire, he said quietly. The USS Defiant suddenly snapped into sharp focus as its quantum field collapsed into a single position. Its dark hull gleamed like polished obsidian as weapon ports opened along its surface. What emerged was not plasma, or particles, or any form of energy that the galaxy recognized as weapons. Instead, beams of twisted space and time lanced outward from the human ship. Where they touched the Krillian fighters, the small craft simply ceased to exist, not destroyed or damaged or disabled, but edited out of reality itself as if they had never been built at all. 12 fighters vanished in the first salvo. The pilots had no time to scream or send final messages or even understand what was happening to them. One moment they were flying through space, firing at an impossible target, and the next moment they simply were not. The remaining 24 fighters broke formation in panic as their squadron leaders tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. Their comrades had not exploded or been shot down. They had been erased from existence by weapons that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. "Red Squadron is gone," screamed one pilot over the communications system. "They just stopped existing. How do you fight something that can make you disappear?" Admiral Vextar watched his supposedly invincible formation dissolve into chaos and felt the cold touch of genuine fear for the first time in decades. His tactical displays showed empty space where 12 experienced pilots had been flying just moments before. No debris fields or energy signatures or any trace that they had ever existed at all. The observation fleet was silent as billions of beings across the galaxy tried to process what they had witnessed. The humans had not simply won a battle. They had demonstrated technology so far beyond conventional understanding that the very nature of warfare had changed in the space of a few minutes. Captain Harper felt a mix of triumph and sadness as she watched the enemy formation scatter. These were brave pilots who had come here expecting a normal fight against a normal enemy. Instead, they had encountered something that challenged everything their species understood about the universe. "Quantum Lance systems cycling for next engagement," Carter reported. "We have enough power for sustained combat operations. Should we pursue the remaining fighters?" Morrison considered the tactical situation. The demonstration had achieved its primary objective of proving human capabilities. Continuing the attack would only result in more unnecessary deaths among crews who were no longer a threat. Negative, he decided. Let them withdraw. They have seen enough to understand what they are really facing. But Admiral Vextar was not ready to accept defeat. His empire had conquered star systems and broken the will of entire species. One human ship could not be allowed to humiliate the Krillian military in front of the entire galaxy, no matter what impossible technology it possessed. "All cruisers advance to attack position," Vextar ordered. "Maximum firepower on that human vessel. If fighters cannot hit it, maybe capital ship weapons will succeed where smaller guns failed." 12 heavy cruisers began moving toward the USS Defiant with weapons charging to full power. Each ship carried enough firepower to level continents, and their combined assault would test even the most advanced defenses that conventional science could create. Morrison watched the approaching cruisers with calm calculation. the fighters, had been a warm-up exercise to demonstrate basic capabilities. Now it was time to show the galaxy what human ingenuity could accomplish when given proper motivation and unlimited resources. Admiral Vextar had built his reputation on never backing down from a fight, no matter how bad the odds became. The destruction of half his fighter wing in seconds should have been enough to convince any reasonable commander to withdraw, but the Krillian Empire had not conquered half the galaxy by being reasonable. "All cruisers focus your fire on the human vessel," Vextar commanded through gritted teeth. "Maximum power on all weapon systems. Overlapping fields of fire. Something that exists in this universe must be destroyable by sufficient force." 12. Heavy cruisers turned their massive weapon arrays toward the USS Defiant. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering packed with enough firepower to crack planetary shields. Plasma cannons that could melt through mountain ranges charged to full power. Particle beam projectors that fired streams of accelerated matter began targeting the human ship. Graviton torpedoes that could collapse matter into singularities loaded into their launching tubes. The combined assault that followed lit up the Proxima Nebula like a newborn star. Energy readings spiked beyond the measurement capability of most sensors as weapons designed to break enemy fleets concentrated their fury on a single target. The light was so bright that observation ships had to activate protective filters to prevent their crews from being blinded. Plasma streams hot enough to ionize asteroid belts converged on the Defiant's position, particle beams carrying the kinetic energy of small meteors hammered at the space where the human ship appeared to be. Graviton torpedoes exploded in sequence, creating gravity wells that should have crushed any vessel caught within their influence. When the glare faded and the energy readings returned to normal, the USS Defiant remained exactly where it had been before the attack began. Not a single scorch mark marred its dark hull. No damage indicators showed on its structure. The ship hung in space as if the devastating assault had been nothing more than a light breeze. Captain Harper smiled grimly as damage reports flowed across her displays. "Minor fluctuations in quantum field generator output," she read aloud. "All systems operating within normal parameters. Hull integrity at 100%. The bridge crew exchanged glances of satisfaction mixed with amazement. They had known their technology was advanced, but seeing it withstand the concentrated firepower of 12 heavy cruisers was still impressive even to those who had built it. Lieutenant Carter monitored the quantum field systems through his neural interface. The sensation of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously had become familiar over months of training, but it still felt strange to experience reality from several different perspectives at once. "Their weapons are certainly powerful," Carter observed. "Unfortunately for them, we are not entirely present in normal space to be damaged by conventional attacks." The observation fleet watched in stunned silence as the impossible became routine. The human vessel had shrugged off attacks that could have reduced moons to rubble, then began preparing its methodical reply. Whatever technology humanity had developed, it was so far beyond conventional understanding that normal military doctrine became meaningless. Engineer Walsh checked her quantum lance systems with growing confidence. The weapons had performed flawlessly during the fighter engagement, and now it was time to demonstrate their full capabilities against larger targets. "Quantum lance generators at maximum power," Walsh reported. "All targeting solutions confirmed and locked. Ready to engage capital ships on your command." Commander Morrison studied the tactical display where 12 Krillian cruisers were still firing at his ship with desperate intensity. These were experienced crews who had probably never faced an enemy they could not damage through overwhelming firepower. The confusion and fear in their communications was obvious even through alien translation systems. "Target the flagship first," Morrison ordered. Let Admiral Vextar understand exactly what kind of technology he decided to challenge. The USS Defiant's quantum lance systems engaged with a sound that seemed to come from outside normal space. Energy that existed in dimensions most species could not perceive, focused into beams that treated the fabric of reality as something to be manipulated rather than accepted. Admiral Vextar had perhaps 3 seconds to comprehend his situation, before space and time itself reached out to dismantle his ship at the molecular level. The Devastator, which had been the pride of the Krillian fleet, began to come apart as its quantum structure destabilized under forces that conventional physics could not explain. "Shields failing," screamed his tactical officer. "Hull breach on, all decks." "No, wait, there is no hull breach. The hull simply is not there anymore." The massive dreadnought collapsed inward as fundamental forces that held its atoms together were systematically disrupted. Within moments, 2 kilometers of advanced warship had been reduced to a cloud of component particles that glowed briefly before dispersing into the nebula's colorful embrace. Vextar's final transmission reached the observation fleet as his command. Ship died around him. "This is impossible. We are the Krillian Empire. We have conquered star systems. We cannot simply cease to exist." But exist he did not, as the quantum lance completed its work. The admiral, who had dismissed human capabilities as primitive nonsense, became part of the cosmic dust that filled the space between stars. The remaining 11 cruisers lasted longer only because the USS Defiant chose to demonstrate different aspects of its technology rather than simply erasing them all in the same manner. Morrison wanted the galaxy to understand the full scope of human advancement, not just their ability to delete inconvenient enemies. "Dimensional displacement on Target 7, Carter announced as another cruiser found its hull phased into an alternate dimension. The crew materialized in emergency suits that appeared around them at the last second, allowing them to survive in vacuum while their ship existed somewhere else entirely. Temporal acceleration on Target 12. Walsh reported as a different vessel, was caught in a field that aged its hull into rust and decay within minutes. Centuries of entropy compressed into moments turned advanced armor into crumbling metal that fell apart under its own weight. Gravitational manipulation on Target 3, Morrison added as space around another cruiser began to fold in on itself. The ship was not destroyed, but compressed into a perfect sphere about the size of a basketball, while its crew was safely transported to nearby escape pods. Each successful strike was reported with clinical precision as the Krillian Empire's finest. Battle Group was systematically neutralized by weapons that treated the laws of physics as tools rather than limitations. Some ships were dissolved at the atomic level. Others were shifted into pocket dimensions, where they would remain until humanity decided to retrieve them. A few were simply moved to different locations in space through controlled wormhole generation. Lieutenant Carter found himself almost feeling sorry for the enemy crews as they tried to fight something that existed outside their understanding of possible technology. Target eliminated through quantum dissolution. Target neutralized via dimensional displacement. Target relocated through spatial folding. When the last Krillian vessel had been dealt with, silence fell across the observation fleet. The demonstration was complete, but its implications were only beginning to sink in. Humanity had not simply won a battle through superior tactics or better training. They had revealed technology that made every other military force in the galaxy obsolete overnight. The USS Defiant hung motionless among debris fields that contained the remains of what had been considered one of the most powerful fleets in known space. Its dark hull reflected the nebula's colorful glow, while its crew prepared for whatever came next. Commander Morrison opened communication channels to the observation fleet, where representatives from every major galactic power were trying to process what they had witnessed. His voice carried easily across the stunned silence that filled the space around Proxima Nebula. To our galactic neighbors, we hope this demonstration has been educational, Morrison said with quiet authority. Humanity extends an invitation to discuss new defensive partnerships and trade agreements under more equitable terms than those previously offered. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Diplomatic requests flooded human communication networks, as species that had dismissed Earth as a minor colony world suddenly recognized that the balance of galactic power had shifted permanently. The Altarian delegate, whose crystalline voice had mocked human capabilities just weeks earlier, was among the first to request emergency talks. But the true impact of what had happened would not be felt for days as news of the engagement spread through faster-than-light communication networks to every corner of known space. The young species that had been patronized and dismissed had proven that technological advancement was not simply about building bigger weapons or stronger defenses. They had demonstrated that understanding the universe at its deepest levels could grant power that transcended everything their neighbors thought they knew about warfare itself. In the hours following the engagement space around the Proxima Nebula filled with emergency transmissions as representatives from every major galactic power tried to process what they had witnessed. The USS Defiant hung motionless among the scattered remains of what had been the Krillian Empire's most powerful battle group, while diplomatic ships from dozens of species requested immediate communication with human authorities. Commander Morrison stood on his bridge, watching tactical displays that showed the aftermath of humanity's demonstration. Where Admiral Vexitar's proud fleet had sailed just hours before, only empty space remained marked by fading energy signatures and the occasional piece of debris that had survived the quantum weapon's reality-altering effects. Captain Harper reviewed combat logs with quiet satisfaction, mixed with something that might have been sadness. The technology that had made this victory possible represented years of breakthrough research by humanity's greatest minds, but using it to destroy other living beings still felt wrong, even when those beings had started the fight. Quantum field. Generators performed flawlessly throughout the engagement, Harper reported. We could have maintained maximum displacement for several more hours if the battle had continued. Power consumption was actually lower than our most optimistic projections. Lieutenant Carter disconnected from his neural interface and rubbed his temples where the quantum field connection always left a slight headache. Experiencing reality from multiple dimensional perspectives simultaneously was not something human brains were designed to handle easily, even with technological assistance. The weapon systems exceeded all performance expectations, Carter added. Quantum lance accuracy was perfect, and we demonstrated at least 6 different methods of neutralizing enemy vessels. I think we made our point about human capabilities. Engineer Walsh checked her displays one final time before powering down the exotic systems that had made humanity's victory possible. The quantum field generators that allowed their ship to exist, in controlled superposition, required enormous amounts of energy and constant monitoring to prevent dangerous instabilities. All systems returning to standby configuration, Walsh announced. Quantum lances are safe and dimensional displacement is at minimum levels. We are ready for normal space operations. As news of the engagement spread through faster-than-light communication networks, the immediate response was both predictable and overwhelming. Species that had barely acknowledged human existence suddenly found urgent reasons to establish diplomatic contact with Earth's government. Trade routes that had been closed to human merchants were quietly reopened. Border disputes that had simmered for years were resolved in humanity's favor without discussion. The Altarian delegate whose crystalline voice had dismissed human engineering as primitive nonsense was among the first to request formal talks. His message arrived within hours of the battle's conclusion, filled with flowery language about mutual cooperation and shared interests that had been notably absent from previous communications. The Zephyrian Confederation, which had refused to allow human ships through their territory, suddenly offered exclusive trading rights and military cooperation agreements. The Thorian Republic, whose tree-like ambassadors had found human pretensions amusing, now spoke of ancient bonds between species who valued scientific advancement over military conquest. Even the mysterious Void Walkers, who rarely communicated with anyone, sent a brief message acknowledging human achievement in terms that their translation systems could barely process. For beings who existed partially outside normal space and time, to recognize humanity's quantum manipulation technology was perhaps the greatest compliment possible. Dr. Rachel Kim's voice reached the observation fleet from Earth, where humanity's Defense Council was already planning the construction of additional quantum-capable warships. Her excitement was obvious even through the professional tone required for diplomatic communications. The successful field test of our quantum manipulation technology represents a new chapter in galactic relations, Dr. Kim announced. Humanity looks forward to sharing the benefits of our research with allies who recognize our legitimate place among the star-faring civilizations. But the most significant change was not in trade agreements or diplomatic protocols. The philosophical impact of what had happened would reshape how every species in the galaxy thought about technology and warfare and the nature of reality itself. Humanity had proven that advancement was not simply about building bigger weapons or developing stronger defenses. They had shown that understanding the universe at its fundamental levels could grant capabilities that seemed impossible to those who still thought in conventional terms. The quantum field manipulation that made the USS Defiant nearly invincible was based on breakthrough discoveries in physics that most alien scientists had never imagined possible. While other species had focused on perfecting existing technologies, humans had taken a completely different approach to the problems of space combat. Instead of trying to build better shields, they had learned to exist in states where enemy weapons could not find them. Rather than developing more powerful guns, they had created weapons that could edit targets out of reality itself. Where others saw the laws of physics as limitations, humans had learned to treat them as tools. Commander Morrison allowed himself a moment of quiet pride as he watched diplomatic requests flood the communication systems. For too long, humanity had been treated as junior partners in a galaxy dominated by species with longer histories and more advanced conventional technology. Now that balance had shifted permanently. Sir called Communications Officer Pete Williams from his station. "We are receiving priority messages from Earth Command. The Defense Council wants a full report on quantum system performance and recommendations for future fleet construction." Morrison nodded. The success of this demonstration meant that humanity would need many more ships like the Defiant. Other species would try to copy their technology or develop countermeasures, and humans could not afford to rest on this single victory. Tell Earth. Command, we will provide complete technical data within 24 hours, Morrison replied. Also recommend immediate construction of at least 12 additional quantum-capable vessels. The galaxy has seen what we can do, but they will not stay. Impressed forever. Captain Harper joined him at the main viewing port where the Proxima Nebula continued its ancient dance of gas and starlight. The beauty of the cosmic cloud remained unchanged despite the historic battle that had taken place within its embrace. "What happens now?" Harper asked. "We proved that human technology can match anything in the galaxy, but that was the easy part. Building lasting peace will be much harder than winning battles." Morrison considered the question carefully. Military victory was often simpler than the diplomatic and political challenges that followed. Humanity now possessed the power to demand respect from their galactic neighbors, but using that power wisely would require patience and careful judgment. "Now we learn to be responsible for the power we have gained," Morrison said finally. "The galaxy will never again dismiss humanity as primitive newcomers, but we must prove we deserve the influence that this technology gives us." The USS Defiant began its journey back to Earth, carrying news of a victory that would reshape galactic civilization. Behind them, the Proxima Nebula glowed with ancient light, while ahead lay a future where humanity would take its place among the greatest powers in known space. But perhaps the most important victory was not military or diplomatic. Humanity had proven to themselves that they could achieve things that seemed impossible when they stopped trying to copy others and started creating their own path through the stars. The species that had once looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone had become the force that would teach the galaxy new ways to understand reality itself. In the years that followed, historians would mark the Battle of Proxima Nebula as the moment when humanity truly joined the community of starfaring civilizations, not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as equals demanding the respect they had earned through courage, innovation, and an unwillingness to accept limitations that others considered absolute.